everyone, thank you very much for watching or listening. Liam Hartree here today with another episode of the Simply Inspired podcast. And today I am truly honored and blessed to welcome one of the greatest runners of all time, Ingrid Kristiansen from Norway, who has a very, very long list of accolades that I have the joy of reading off a few of those here. Holds multiple marathon world records, one of which stood for 13 years over the 10,000 meters, one of which held for 16 years. She held records for the 500 meters, 10,000 meters, the only person ever to hold them at the same time. Kristiansen won the New York City Marathon, London Marathon, Boston Marathon, multiple times on some of those, Chicago Marathon, 10,000 meter European champion, world cross-country champion, and a lot more. You know, Ingrid, I've got a list here that you've accomplished so many things. I had to keep a list. That's just a few. There's probably a few missing, but our audience gets the idea. But I just want to thank you so much once again for coming on the show and taking time out of your day to do this. I know you said it's an honor, but it really is an honor for me as well. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you for coming, for I can come to you.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Absolute pleasure. So when we take a moment to look back in time, we will talk about your life, past, present, and future. But when we take a moment to look at the past, out of everything you achieved, there are so many things: world championships, European championships, world records, Olympic Games, of course. So do you have certain races that are your personal favorites or are the most special to you in your memory when you look back now?
It's a lot. I have different good memories, but one of the big memories was winning the London Marathon in 1985 when I set my world record. And I didn't know that this record would be standing for so many years, and it took 13 years before somebody else took it. So maybe that was a really good race. I think so. I was maybe a little bit ahead of the rest of the runners at the time. And I think that came from my cross-country ski career. I was a skier before I started running. So I had a really big heart and good lungs. And when I got my legs trained for running, I was a little bit better than most of the runners at the time.
Okay, so that gave you a head start in a way. That makes sense. Yes. So that is your favorite. I love asking that question because you never know which memory is going to come back as being the most special to you. Do you remember which races were perhaps the most challenging in some way, whether it was something going on in your life outside of the race, or maybe the race itself where you had to push through perhaps more than some other one?
Yeah, I had a lot of that kind of races, but I had a really tough. My best season was in 1986 when I set some of the world records on the track. But on the other side of my life at that time, I had a mother who was got a cancer, breast cancer. So she lived with us at home, and I tried to help her during her sickness. And my son wasn't older than 3 years, so it had a lot of things happening in my life. But still, I got energy to really get to be a really good runner. So I set 3 of my records at that year. So maybe I got something, energy from something, I don't know. But that was a challenging year, but also my best year as a runner. So that was something special.
It's very interesting. On the topic of pushing through challenges and obstacles and everything, we will talk about your physical training, obviously. But before we do, I'm curious to touch on how you would mentally prepare for a race, how you would have the winning mindset to give yourself that edge as well as in the body, if that makes sense.
Yes, of course. I came from Norway, and in Norway I had a really good runner in the early 80s, late 70s, and her name was Grete Weiss. So every race I went to, I was a skier at that time on a Norwegian national team, and I ran in the summer just for fun. And I used to be second behind Greta for years. Even if I go to outside Norway, I came second. So I didn't know why I didn't make winning over her. So I start to train. My coach and we went to a specialist in Norway and asked for help, and he gave me some good keys for trying to beat her. And when I used that for 2-3 weeks, something easy. I was a runner, and when you run a race, you are in the front. You have nobody in front of you, are the first. So I try to visualize being the first, coming to the finish line with my heads over my arms over my heads. I was a winner. That was one of the things I had to work with, and the other was never back in front of you. And I asked this guy, how long do you think I have to train on this to make a change? And he said, yeah, maybe 3, 4, 5 weeks. And I went home, and of course I had to train also my physical, the training, the running at the same time, but use 5 minutes every day to visualize these things. And it said, 4 or 5 weeks, you will make it. After 2.5 weeks, I went in the Norwegian Championship cross country, and I won over Greta for the first time. I didn't understand what was happening. And also for Greta, she didn't understand anything because I was suddenly in front of her. And this was the first time. The week after, I won Sentrumsløp, a big 10K in Norway with Greta Waitz and Sola Bøyd in the field, and I won the race. And the week after, I set the European record in the London Marathon, just 8 months after my son was born. And I won the race and set the record. So then I believed in thinking, not only the training, but also the training with the head, and helped me a lot during my career as a runner. That was the start.
Fascinating to hear the inside track of that, as they say, because visualization and these types of topics I hear about a lot from people who've done great things, as you have. But I think it's a very valuable life lesson that people can use in any area of life, whether they are an athlete.
Yeah, of course, everything. You can use it in everything you use. You have to believe in yourself and what you are good in, and try to think yourself into the situation you want to be. And that happened with me. I really got a big gap in front of the rest of the runners. I used 5 minutes every day during the 10 years I was a runner, and I did good races when I didn't have injuries.
Very much. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And obviously with your physical training and your day-to-day regime, for you, maybe it's very ordinary because it's what you were doing for so long. But I would like to ask what you enjoyed most, maybe to look at it from the two sides, what you enjoyed most about your training, and maybe something that you didn't like about it, maybe just the two sides of the discipline, you know?
Yes, of course. Sometimes you get a little bit bored of the training, but most of the time when I was training physical, I love to train. And most of the training I did by myself or with my husband and some of my club members. My coach I met maybe once a week for at most, but I was talking with him on the phone, so we had so much near contact because he lived a little bit away from me then. But I like the training. I like the competition. I love to compete because I think the best way of training is to compete. Because if you compete, you see where you are at the moment. If you came half a minute behind the best one, you are not good enough. So then you have to go home and work with the things you are not good in. It's so easy to train on this thing you feel you are good in, because that is nice to do you know you can't. But if you find something you don't are so good in, then you can really go forward for a while. And that was one of the good thing with my coach Johan Kagestad. He gave me told me where I had something to win. If you work with this and these things, you can really getting much better. So then I think, yes, maybe this is good for me to train them, because he wants me to be the best. And he was my coach, and we were really good. We were a good team, because he told me and if what to do, and if I wasn't agree with, if I agree with it, we did discuss. And I think that's a good connection with the coach and the athlete to discuss, because the athlete is the person who had to do the work. The athlete and the coach, he knows what you have to do, but as an athlete you need to know what you're doing. So when I'm coaching athletes today, I try to think like that. I have my idea plan for the athlete, but if the athlete wants to do it different, we have to discuss ways which good fits in her or his life. Then I think it's important.
Absolutely. Very important. And there's some very good life lessons that you touched on there. As I mentioned to you when we spoke before, this is the reason why I do these. So thank you for sharing some of your wisdom, some of your knowledge. And well, it's true, I mean it as I say that, And when we focus on that topic for just a moment, the topic of people who wish to achieve a dream or an important goal in their lives, whether this is to do with sports or whether this is to do with something else, business or education or family, what would be one or two things you would say to those people listening to this who want to achieve something, but it doesn't have to be sports specific, it can be if you want, but maybe something about how to be a happier person or how to achieve your goals. Just a little, it's a very big question, but maybe if there's one or two things you would like to share, it would be wonderful.
I think one of the first thing, if I work with people, if it's sports people or other people, and they have a goal in front of, they have some goals, and I ask them, do you have a family? Yes. If they say yes, I ask them, have you spoken to your wife or husband about your goals? No. If you don't have done that, I say, go home and tell them what's your goal. So you have your family or the people around you on the same team as you. It's much easier if you have the people around you who is very important people for you on the same team as you. If you don't speak and ask them, it's much harder to, for example, use a lot of time playing piano or reading books or training as an athlete if they don't understand why you are doing this, if you don't tell them about your goals. So I think that's one of the most important thing, to have the people around you on your same team. Then it's easier. And also it's easier because if you tell them about this, they understand why you are sad if you don't get the results you want to get on the way to your goal. And maybe if you have them on the team, then they will maybe try to find something to make you happy, even you don't make it as you want during on the way to the goal there. If you understand what I mean, it's so important. So that's the same, and of course also to believe in what your goals are. If you don't believe in it yourself, you will never get it. My problem was when I was on as an athlete in the early 80s, and I told them I will set the world record and I will do this and I will do that, and everybody in Norway, because we had the Jantelov, and they said, what are you thinking you are? You think, but it's nobody else had done this. But I have, and I answered then, but I have, my plan is to be the first one making it. So you have to be a little bit ahead of the rest if you want to do something nobody else had done before you. So that's difficult, but even it's fun when you you make it.
Absolutely. Ingrid, I knew that would be a good answer, but that was a really, really, really good answer because there's some very powerful advice in there. As I said, people can use this for any life area. It's a beautiful thing that you shared there, to be honest. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you.
Well, I think so. I think so. And going back to yourself personally for a moment with this, obviously you competed all over the world during your career. Do you have a favorite place that running took you that you maybe would not have been able to go had you not been a professional runner, if that makes sense?
Of course, I have never been, if I haven't been a runner, I haven't been in Japan and Australia and New Zealand. Then it's so far away from Norway. But in England and in Germany and in Italy, it's easier to go through to this kind of places. But and also when I was running, we didn't go too much to Africa because Africa was more for the moment on the moment side. There wasn't too many runners from Kenya and Ethiopia at my time as today. So I have been around the world just because I run, and I think it's a good. I have many good memories from most of the countries. But the best memories from races I have from Germany and England, because I won big races in these countries and had nice when I ran the European Championship on the 10,000 meter, and also all the London Marathon I ran and won. It was nice for me, nice memories.
Absolutely. It's very interesting to hear about it because that is sort of one of the benefits of everything you were doing, one of the intangible benefits, if you like, that people don't talk about very often. So very, very, very interesting. Going back to the mindset topic we were touching on earlier, I have one more thing about that. Obviously, something you would be very used to, but when it comes to pushing through the pain barriers, as people call them, pushing through obviously the tiredness and the pain and the fatigue, etc. What were your methods during that moment, if you like, when things were hurting a lot?
When I went to big races and I had to run 25 laps on the track, 25 laps can be boring. But I try to think that the 10,000 meter on the track is the same as 10,000 in the forest or on the roads. And so I try to think this is something I used to do. And also when you have the audience around you, I learned to take all the energy from the people who were cheering for you into my body, and it helps me to get more energy during the race, even if I was really tired. And also when I passed, at that time, when I was running, we didn't have rabbits. And there was not too many girls running fast. So when I ran on the Bislett and I set the world record in 86, I passed all the runners in the field 1, 2, and 3 times. So I tried to get I passed with 1 lap as a competition. So I found my own way of pushing myself during races then. And of course, the people on the audience helped me to really push. Most of the time it was fun. I didn't feel I was too tired. This is something special when you're doing good races. It's easier because you get the energy from everything. I also had some bad memories from races I didn't do so well as, but then I also think to take the energy from the people around sharing at you, and I think that helps even when you do bad races. That was one of the things I used to get energy during races.
Yes, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. And it's very good to touch on that because people know, obviously, that with everything you've achieved, it's not always glamorous. Sometimes things don't go to plan or whatever. So understanding how you adapted to that is a very valuable lesson for people, I think. So when it comes to the Olympics as well, this is one I just like to touch on a little bit because of its grandeur, because of how special that is. But really, I don't have this very specific question about it. It's one thing to watch the Olympics, it's another thing to be there all together and be part of history as you were with that as well. But your memories from what it was like in the Olympics behind the scenes, basically, the things that people may not have seen from the outside looking in, if that makes sense. Can you maybe share with us 1 or 2 memories from that point of view?
As for me, when I was in the Olympics,
Yes.
I was in the Olympics as a skier in '76, but I didn't get into the cross country. I was just one of the team who couldn't went to the race. But when I went to the Olympics in '84, the first Olympic game with the marathon on the women's side, and we were 2 girls from Norway who could win the race. We were favorites. And of course, going to the Olympics then in '84, a lot of the medical people in Norway and also the coaches and the leaders, they told us that the pollution was too bad and so hot and everything will be awful. And we were told to be in a group. If something happened in the field early in the race, be there in the group. And I was a typical runner, went to the front and pushed myself. So I didn't go there. I didn't do that in that race. But the winner, Drum Benoit, she did it. And if I had listened to my body and my intuition, I had been with her in the race, trying to be in the race with her. But I didn't do it. I don't know why. So maybe I haven't been better than number 4. But I tried. I didn't try. I was in the pack behind, and I came in at the 4th place. And during that race, that the negative thinking, I learned how to think positive. But during that race, I looked around me and saw the girls around me in the field. Then Drum Benoit was far behind, in front of us, and I was behind in the second group with people who ran 4-5 minutes slower than me on the marathon, and I was in that group, and it was the worst thing to do. I didn't like to be in that group, so I lose a lot of energy of negative thinking during that race, and I came in on the 4th place. That was not a good race for me. So that was something happened behind the scene in a Norwegian team. I had to be in a group, but why I didn't go. But the next Olympics and also the next big races, somebody told me how to run a race. I never listened to them. I listened to my heart. What is right for me? And I think that's right, very important for people in the sport and also outside the sport in different other topics, that to believe in yourself and listen to your intuition. What's right for you at the moment you are doing it.
Yes, again, very, very powerful advice. And wow, as I said, it's one thing to watch the race, isn't it? It's another thing to peek behind the scenes. So thank you for such a brutally honest assessment, if you like, you know. Um, I'm glad we brought that up at all. Sorry to bring up a race that
No,
was
no.
not ideal, you know.
Okay.
Very, very good. During your career, how did you personally handle um, basically being famous, being well known, representing your country? Again, from the mindset point of view, you're obviously a very humble person, but you've done so much to be proud of. So, how do you personally feel about it when people approach you and say, "Oh, Ingrid, you achieved so many things," and in this type of context, if that makes sense, you know?
Yeah, I understand. And now, as I used to say when I was running, it's nice to be world's best runner, but that's just a different profession than being in a teacher or a nurse or something. So I was happy to be a runner, and I like to run, and I didn't do too much out of it. I tried to live a normal life with my family, with my son, and friends who's never been in the sport. So I think I was just down there, and being from Norway, yeah, we can't live or being a sport person. It's you have to think about the life after the sport, especially in the 80s then when I was the runner. Maybe it's different today, but you are just one person or a lot of good athletes from Norway. So now it's important to have both your feet on the ground and try to be yourself, even if you are a little bit famous for some years.
Absolutely. It's good advice again, but um yeah, it makes a lot of sense. You've touched on family as well during this talk with first with the people that you coach and teach, but also with your own family and being away from your husband and everything. During that time, how did you manage the rigors of training to such a high level, competing, traveling, and everything, while still balancing the family life, if you don't mind me asking about
Yeah,
that?
yeah, that's okay. Now I try to be most of the time at home, because at home I could make my own food. I can sleep in my own bed, and be with my family and also with my best friends. And now that this is very important for me. So I try to stay most of the time at home. But sometimes I had to be away. And then I had often my family with me, because that was very important for me to have my son around me. Even he was sometimes crying in the night, and yeah, it wasn't the best for an athlete, but for me it was important to do this, and I think that helps me to be the best runners at that time, because again, the running was just something I love to do, but the most important for me was my family and my friend. So I was more relaxed around my running compared to a lot of the other runners, especially from Norway at that time. They were more very strict when to train, how to eat, how to sleep. And I was more like, take it this day is like this. I had to do the training, but the rest I will see. So I think I was very relaxed. So maybe if I had been an athlete today, and I had a coach of today, I think maybe this coach had been. I think I wasn't enough serious about my sport, but I was serious enough because I knew what to do. But I like to do it in my way. Well, that's something. As a coach now, I know that the athletes is different. So you have to ask them. They need different things to work with. Somebody can be away from the family and everybody for weeks and months. Somebody else have to be with friends and have more a normal life and have a job. So there we are different. So I think one of my best description for me was to be more like everybody else who had different profession, as not a runner but doing other things.
Yeah, it makes sense. It does. It's fascinating to hear the insight of it. So also we've touched on your coaching sort of more into the present day and after your career. We've touched on that a few times. But what do you enjoy most about passing on your knowledge, passing on your experience, if you like, to the next generation? We can touch a little bit on how you transitioned into that role, if that's okay, and what you enjoy most about it, please.
Mm-hmm. I have never been a Norwegian coach. I think maybe that's because I'm a woman and it's too many guys who wants to coach people. And for me, it's not important to coach to be a famous coach. I try to coach people, especially in Norway, here, to be as good as they can be. And for me, I have now a girl in Norway who's coming up. She ran the first marathon in London, and she did okay. And my goal is to try to get her to beat some of my records. That could be the best thing happening for me as a coach, to get advice to the athlete and she can beat my record. For example, the 10,000 meter record, who was in 13 years, standing for 13 years. If she can do that, I will be really happy. So that's my goal as a coach then, to get somebody to be really good in running and better than I have been. And maybe the way of the way I train is still good enough in 2023. I don't think it's too bad. They have now when they're running races, they have rabbits, 2 and 3 rabbits maybe, and they have a light rabbit. So maybe, and they have really good shoes. So maybe if I've been running today with all these things in the shape I was in the 80s, maybe I've been in the same position today. I don't know. I will never get to the answer. But I think some of my athletes can be as good as that.
Yeah. Well, that's really something that you're pushing her to surpass your own achievements. I like that. And yes, I mean the different eras as well. That is a very interesting topic. I'll come back to that in just a moment. Again, if you don't mind me asking, do your children run as well? Did you teach them to run and everything?
No, they have been running a little bit, but they are not competing on high level. I had my daughter, she is coaching also people, more normal people and fun runners, and help them with the training and the lifestyle. My youngest son, he he's just turned 30. He has been a good bicyclist, cross-country bike, mountain biking, and also bike on the Norwegian team then. But nobody have been, I have never pushed them. I make them being happy training. I think that's the most important. Not everybody wants to compete. So no, nobody have been really competing in the sport.
Well, as long as they're happy, that's the main thing.
Yeah, that's the
Good
most,
thing.
that's most important.
And I'm sure you'll pass on some of the, as you say, the training, the discipline and everything. And after that, it's choice, isn't it? What people do. So,
Mm.
yeah, very cool. I just was a little bit curious about that. So, moving into the last few things now, before we wrap this up. You have mentioned in passing about the different eras, about the how sort of technical running has become now with the shoes and all of the changes. Can you share with us maybe one or two thoughts on a few changes you've seen in your sport that you like, and maybe a couple that you don't like, maybe to sort of balance both sides of it, of the fence, because obviously having been around this for many years, you will have seen many things come and go. So I think it will be a really good thing to find out a little bit on a couple of changes you like, maybe a couple you don't like within the sport, please.
Yes. I don't like, in my sport, I don't like all this thing talking about records, because records, then you see what happened with the long distance running on the woman's side. Is always girls from almost everywhere, girls from Kenya and Ethiopia and Africa, who is beating everybody from Europe. So I think that's a bad thing with the sport then now at the moment, and it's too much. Maybe the European have been a little bit lazy. Maybe they have been lazy because we have everything. Most of the country, for example, Norwegians, then they have everything. They can travel or around the world without having the shoes on. You don't need to compete to travel. For me, there was one of the way to come out of Norway to see the world, to compete around the world. That's one of the things happening, and that maybe this is something happening with the Africans now. They can come around the world if they're running fast. They can come out of Africa and run all over the world and even win the races and earn money. So that's something we have to find something, some way to find back that the European can push themselves and have the same goal as we had in the 70s, 80s. In England, you have a lot of guys who run very fast. When I started to run, I can make a lot of names. So that's one of the things is bad for the sport now, I think, because like World Championship cross country, there was a championship. The whole world was. The Norwegian television had it on the television. Nobody knows about it now because it's almost only the African who's running fast. So that's the bad thing then. And also maybe it's too much manager to make the race. They can mix up the races or the way they want the athletes to be in the race then. So if you don't have a manager, you can come into this race because you are not allowed to come into the race even if you are good enough. So that's one of the things I'm not so happy with. And also, of course, all these rabbits. I can't believe why when I ran, there wasn't allowed to have a rabbit. And now you have 3 rabbits. Even also the light rabbit at the end of you have to if you're in good shape, then it's almost impossible. Don't you don't run fast. So that's one of the things, that some of the things I don't like with the sport at the moment. But maybe it will change. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, it's a very profound insight into the changes, especially in the broader topics in terms of a number of the political things with the managers and everything. I like what you said about the hunger, in terms of the people having the hunger to win, to do well. A very important topic. So those are a few changes, not so good. Are there a couple of things you've seen that you think have improved? So to flip that on its head, look at it the other way. Are there a couple of things you think have changed for the better in recent years, maybe?
Yes, of course, you can, as an athlete, you can live, you can be an athlete a little bit longer because you can earn some money, so you can keep going for some more years because you can live of the money you can earn when you are running compared to earlier when you had the funds. You have to make the money into a fund and you can take it out when you're finished. You remember in the 80s, we couldn't earn money as a runners and use them and going to the Olympics because then we were professional. So we had to make it a little bit back the scene then to go to the Olympics, even if you earn some money. So that's the good thing now, that if you earn money in your sport, you can keep going and can be in the Olympics, you can be all over. But I don't like now it's coming up a little bit better with the Europeans and also our countries, Australia, New Zealand, US is growing in athletics, and I think it's a little bit changed now in some of the compared to them to what distance or what discipline in the track and field you are in. But you see what happened with the Africans. They are not good in typical technical like javelin, high jump, because then you need to have a good coach in young age to keep. As a long distance runner, you can just run and have fun in your running, and you can go into a race even and never been on the track. You can win the race because you are fit enough to win it. But being a javelin thrower or a high jumper, you need to have a really good coach. You can see who is doing really good in a track meeting. It's not too many from Ethiopia or Kenya who's doing good in high jump. They are doing good run in long distance run or 1500 meter and down to the 800 meter. So that's also something could be nice to have some athletes from all over the world can do also these technical disciplines. Then I think the sport will be even better for us who's looking on the television.
Absolutely, yeah, a very, very incisive insight into many things there. Last couple of things, Ingrid, and I will let you go to enjoy your evening. Okay, so two more topics, and we'll wrap this up. Because the time has just gone by in a flash for me. So anyway, one of the things to touch on as well. When you look back now and you assess your personal impact on the running world, and by this I mean the inspiration, because bear in mind with these changes from the 1984 Olympics, the first women's event and everything, do you basically feel that you have inspired more women to take up running, to compete in sports in general with more acceptance than perhaps in your era competing, if you follow?
I think what happened in the 80s on the long distance, on the women's side, I think the help that the Olympics came and then we ran marathon. Because when I start to run as a 15-year-old girl and I came to the European Championship in 71. In 1971, there was the first year the woman could run 1500 meter on the championship. 1500 meters, the longest. So what happened from 70 in the early 70s up to the 80s was a big gap that we women can run as long as the man, and I think that helps a lot of the girls around the world to keep going into the sport as a runner, because it's easy to just run. As I told when it's talking about the coaches, you don't need to have too much good coaches to take a run, have fun, and if you have fun and you run a little bit long distance, you can be good if you have a little bit of talent and can go into competition. So I think that helps. That the girl could go out and run a little bit more in the early 80s, with that the distance became a little bit longer on the women's side.
Absolutely, yeah. I find the changes and the cultural shifts, those aspects fascinating as well. So the last thing really is
But I can also say one thing, that
sure.
that it's many have asked, why can two girls from Norway be world's best? We were two girls from Norway, a little country with 4 million people at that time, be so good in the long distance. And I think one of the answers at that time that was that Norway is we were learned to could do the same as the men, and also we could do it compared to, as I talked to Rosa Mata at the time when I was back in running, that it wasn't so easy for the Portuguese woman to just go out and run compared to the Norwegian girls, because they were more at home. They had to be at home, take care of kids and all these things. In Norway, we were more free at that time, but now we don't have too much good runners from Norway then on the women's side.
Mm. Well, I'm sure we will again, because
Yeah.
I hope so, because these things, it's always like the sea, isn't it? With time, the change comes in, goes out, comes
Oh,
in,
of course, of course.
So fingers crossed anyway, that will develop the right way. And the last thing really, we may have already touched on this, but just to double check, in terms of your future plans, in terms of what you're doing from here. Now, you mentioned this girl that you're training, coaching to surpass your own records. But is there anything else like that that you'd like to mention going forward that you're sort of dreaming of now, or have we pretty much covered that topic?
I dream. What if you ask me about my own kids, and I try to tell them to be happy with using your own body, do something you like to do, and for example, today it's so many just looking at the phone, and they are not working, they are not running, they are not biking, they are sitting still and playing with a mobile. And this time I try to give also my grandchildren, give them the learning how to nice it to be working with your body. If you're biking, swimming, you have fun with doing something to work with your body instead of just sitting still. So that's one of the things we are working with, that people to be more active. You don't need to go into competitions, but just to be happy and active and use your body a little bit every day. That's one of the goals I have for the future. I'm soon 70 years old, so I can't be good, but I still better than I have been. But I feel still it's fun to take a run or a bike ride. It's going slow, but I still have fun when I'm doing this. And it's so important for us who's getting older that everything is going slower. But if you still have it, it's happy with doing it. You have to go forward to do it instead of sitting down and say, oh, it's going so slow. I can just be sitting here. Then we're getting old and lazy and in bad shape.
Yeah. Well, it's very powerful advice because, you know, one of the things that's really cool about what you said there, there's quite a few things, but one of the things, age being just a number and everything
Yeah.
like that is very true. And to be quite honest with you, I think that you really illustrate that point very well, because when you just said about age just then, it's amazing. You would never guess unless you said anything. But as well as that, the message about people having something they enjoy doing. Absolutely. You know, whether it's something, however far you take it, you enjoy the process of doing it. It's good for mind, body, soul, every part of us.
Everything.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's very, very powerful advice, I think. Ingrid, thank you so much for your time. And thank you so much for sharing everything you shared from your heart, you know, today. No, really. I mean, because that's the way it's come over. Like to me, the time has just gone by quick, and you know, we've just been chatting. I've really enjoyed it. I hope you've enjoyed it. But
Yes.
I love your honesty in that way that you're just saying exactly from the heart. I mean that as a nice compliment, you know. At times it's funny, at times it's things you're saying very sweet, very nice, sometimes very brutally honest, but it's always just from the heart. So thank you for sharing everything you shared anyway. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to the Simply Inspired YouTube channel, and there'll be more videos coming soon.